Will Hardy methodically explodes postgame. The NBA and this program will wait for nothing. When you make it all about yourself, that's when it all goes bad and more. Next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 pow.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps, including YouTube. And we have the daily newsletter for you at lockedondaily.com. All free. On today's show, I'm going to be honest about today's show. So Will Hardy pregame yesterday got asked a great question by Ben Anderson about whether or not when you're developing a player, you try to take their good to a superpower or whether you deal with weaknesses first. And I thought it had a great answer, and I was all set to lead the show with that. And then I watched last night's game, and Keyonte took what I thought were three just horrendous shots to open the third quarter. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to talk about Keyonte because I think Keontae's so skilled, and I want him to get better, and I want him to make it so badly. I just think it's important to us. I like him. I think there's a chance. I think he's super skilled. I hate to see it go to waste. And yet, like 41% of his games, he shoots 33% or worse. So I was going to do a show instead on like, okay, let's look at his shot selection because it's terrible. And in a positive light, like if he can fix this, this is like, it's fixed kind of is my feeling. He's figured out the off the bounce three. He's got all, like, it's fixed. And then Will Hardy went off postgame. Off. So we're going to do some semblance of that order. I have all of them prepared, and I don't really know if I can fit them all in. And then tomorrow's show may or may not happen in the sense that I have a special day scheduled with my son, which is a very early wake up, and I don't know that I'll get this show done. I might try to get it done tonight for you and just have it launched tomorrow. Okay. So with all that said, and today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. It's a little bit of it. Like here we are in the middle of a season with like no wins, and you're like wonder how you possibly get content. I have too much content today. Is really what I'm telling you. All right, we're going to start with Will Hardy's postgame because Will Hardy went off last night. There's no other way to talk about it. I mean, and there are so many different comments and selections and periods of time in which I'm going to grab two. There's the first part where it's his opening statements. He's trying to be very calm, and he just cannot keep all of his thoughts at bay. And he doesn't snap or anything. He's very controlled. And then I think it was Andy Larson asks him, then you be specific, and then it really comes. So let's go to Will Hardy.
To understand that this is
last night, post-game, and this is where, like, he's a minute and 50 into his opening comments, and right now I think it percolates to the top. After the Jazz, if you missed it last night, basically the equivalent, they got outscored 90-42 in the final 28 minutes. That's the equivalent of losing an NBA game by 80 points.
To understand that this is not something that you can take for granted. The NBA will stop for no one, and our program will stop for nobody. There needs to be accountability of self first, and everybody on our team needs to understand that opportunity should not be taken lightly. And a lot of our young players are getting the chance to play in games, to wear a Utah Jazz jersey, and to represent themselves. And ultimately, we all have to answer for our performances. I've talked a lot about how we carry ourselves meaning something to me, and those words are not hollow. That second half was really disappointing. And it's not representative of who we want to be as an organization. It's not representative of who I want us to be. There are very few times where I've been disappointed in our group, and tonight I'll drive home disappointed. But we have to all wake up tomorrow and get back to work. And it is one game. It is one half. I understand that. And I'll get some sleep and wake up tomorrow with perspective. But during the game, perspectives for the birds.
Okay. So let's look at this for a second here. I think we can give some sympathy to the players. This is a weird situation. Trying to win at the end of a game does not seem to be a priority. The veterans aren't playing a lot. We're starting 3 rookies. It's tough. But Will's point is, and he's right, there's not a player on this roster who's been in the league for 3 years or less, other than maybe Walker Kessler, who are clearly an NBA player. If Keyonte George is not careful, he is Bones Highland. If Isaiah Collier is not careful, he's Dennis Smith Jr. If Kyle Filipowski is not careful, he's somebody who just never defends. If Bryce Sensabaugh is not careful, he's just one of a million guys who could shoot and never play in the NBA. They've all got to still establish who they are. And the next year guys are hanging on. Memphis scored on 16 of 17 possessions at one point and 10 straight to open the fourth quarter. So Will's point is pretty valid here that if you're going to play in this is an opportunity, and I admire Will for trying to keep that level in the midst of kind of a lot of chaos. It's not a great environment. It's not like a ruined, again, I've said this a million times, don't give me that garbage about, oh, you're ruining the culture. Okay, the culture this year isn't great. It'll be fine. Once you get a good player, 2 good players, culture changes, you're fine. And you got this guy's your head coach, you're fine. But right now, it's a little funky. But they've got to be mentally stronger than that. Andy Larson asked the follow-up. Here's where Will really lets it rip a little bit.
I think in maybe more particular terms, what you thought was lacking on the court.
Pass the mother ball. Run back on defense. When it's time to communicate what we're doing on defense, you should do it at a volume louder than I'm talking to you right now. When there is a loose ball, you need to want it more than the other team. You are a member of a team. This is not about you. This is not a personal workout for you. I could go on and on and on, but you get the point. It's a team game. And the moment that you make everything about yourself is the moment that it all goes bad.
The thing that's such a killer about this is how darn good they were in the first half last night. They were so good in the first half of last night's game. Now, the ball went in, but they moved it. They shared it. Keyonte threw these great jump passes out of the corner that got Bryce open looks. Bryce and Johnny Juzang had a 2-man game going against each other. It was terrific. And then they kind of stopped moving the basketball and passing. And then, Will later in the press conference has a really good point about you stop moving the ball. And one guy does it, and then the next guy does it. And we've seen this a lot. One guy doesn't move the ball, then the next guy doesn't move the ball. And then the next guy says, well, they didn't move it, or they didn't move, so I don't need to move it. And now it's deflating of the energy of the group. And now the defense suffers. And everyone stops being engaged as a unit. And then teams score on 16 of 17 possessions and 10 straight. 10 straight to open the fourth quarter. The Jazz got their first stop to open the fourth quarter with 6 minutes left in the quarter. I mean, I don't want to badger these guys. I'm not here to beat them up, but that's silly. And not to like pile on, but just to put it in context, they weren't facing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, and Norm Nixon. John Conchar, Zach Edey, Vince Williams Jr., Desmond Bain, and I don't even know who the fifth guy on the floor was. But those are the four guys that were on the floor to open the fourth quarter. Zach Edey, John Conchar, Luke Kennard, Vince Williams Jr., and Desmond Bain are the 5 guys on the floor to open the fourth quarter that score on. And Jalen Wells comes in for Desmond Bain with 7:50 left, and he's now on the floor, and they still score for another 2 minutes. Vince Williams misses a 3 at the 6:03 mark. Collier gets the rebound. It is the first time in the quarter, in the fourth quarter, that the Jazz clear the ball to the other side. It is what it is. Will Hardy was not pleased. The bottom line is we got young guys with a ton of skills. We got a bunch of young guys who have a chance. And when you're drafted 10th or below in the NBA, your chances of making it as a rotation player in the league in the first round, 10th or below, is 50-50. And if we're being perfectly honest, I don't think any of them have moved the meter more than 50-50, and they should act like it every second of the day. And that's Will's point, and he's right. Pre-game, Will was really, really interesting about player development and whether or not, a great question from Ben Anderson of KSL Sports Zone and KSLSports.com, of whether or not in development you should improve a really good skill into a superpower or a weakness into something that's acceptable. Great question, really interesting answer, and it's next on Locked on Jazz. Today's edition of Locked on Jazz is brought to you by Intercap Lending, and that is Steve Carter, our own personal loan officer at Intercap Lending. Intercap Lending is a mortgage company that's shaking things up by making home loans accessible, straightforward, and personal. And whether you're buying your first home, refinancing, or exploring options as a veteran, Intercap is here to guide you. It's not your average mortgage lender. It's people first, and we have our own dedicated loan officer in Steve Carter. And there's simply nobody better in customer service that we have been sending people to for 7 years now than Steve Carter. So if you want to be like Chris and say, second time I've used Intercap and I couldn't be happier, Steven and his team got us a competitive interest rate, closed my new house quicker than anyone ever has. Steven himself was great to work with, trying to get paperwork needed in the middle of me traveling across the country. He was responsible, knowledgeable, and even always pleasant to speak with, sometimes at 8 p.m. Or it would be like Malcolm, who said amazingly knowledgeable, helpful, and friendly, went way above and beyond. That's the essence of Steve Carter, and that's the essence of Intercap Lending. So email me at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com. And have me set you up with Steve Carter so that you can get your VIP experience at Intercap Lending. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. What time is it? It's game time. That's right. The ticketing app of Locked On and for you, because there's nothing like watching basketball live, the energy of the crowd, the sound of the sneakers, the hardwood, or maybe even a celebrity sighting courtside. If you want to catch a game in person, Game Time makes it easier than ever to get tickets. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff, shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets, whether it's a concert, a ball game, theater, somewhere you're going to be on the road, you want to check out whether you can go to a game or a concert. It's all at Game Time. Check the Game Time app. There are amazing deals on huge matchups coming up. Super deals, Game Time Picks, even highlights, super deals giving you the best bang for your buck. Peace of mind with the seat views before, no surprise fees, and lowest price guaranteed. You can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets at Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem your code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. It's Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hope you're watching the Amazon Fire TV bracket breakdown shows with Gordon Hayward, Monique Billings. Absolutely fabulous. The women's bracket equally as terrific. All right, pregame.
Thing in
Whoa.
power.
It starts playing automatically. Didn't know that. Pregame. I opened it up. We're talking about shooting. The Jazz seem to be doing very well in shooting. And through the press conference, Ben Anderson asked this great question about whether you take a player's something that's really good and turn it into a superpower, or if they have a weakness, you try to make it acceptable as your priority, developing players. Here's what Will Hardy had to say.
Is probably first. Maybe you don't get it to superpower, but you're trying to help a young player establish an identity. I've said that to you guys before. When I check in the game tonight, how do I help the team? What is my purpose on the court when I'm out here now? I think the weakness into a passable skill is something that's addressed when it's so weak that it almost messes the game up. I think as it relates to shooting, for example, a young perimeter player who no one guards, it can become an issue. Now, if it happens in a short amount of time, it's not necessarily an issue, but if it gets to a point where no one guards you and you won't look at the basket, it does mess up the flow of the game a little bit. If you're so bad defensively that every possession the other team's just pointing at you and picking on you, that's a problem. Because now we're not playing team defense. We're all just trying to clean up your mess. So it's a case-by-case basis, but generally with our young players, my approach is to lean into who they are now early.
So pretty interesting. First of all, it's why Isaiah Collier taking 8 threes last night is awesome. Because Isaiah Collier had reached a little bit of a point of that guy who's not shooting, and it actually was becoming a problem. It was messing with the game. Teams were not guarding Isaiah Collier, and then the offense was kind of hitting a buzzsaw every single time. So the fact that Isaiah took 8 threes last night is fabulous. The first thing he's got to do is take them. It's kind of where we've been on a few of these guys. If you're not a point guard in the NBA, you've got to take 4 or 5 threes a night. We're that simple. And Isaiah took 8 last night. It was terrific. And he made 4 of them. He came out shooting them early. Often they went under. He made the shots. The defensive item, plenty of our guys could be the one that's been called out for the pigeon. The pigeon's the one you're shooting after every possession. So that could be anything. But it's a really interesting concept of whether you've got to avoid having a weakness that is so significant that it messes with the game. The other one I thought was really interesting is you have to establish an identity of a young player so that when you check into the game, you know what you're trying to do. Now, here's what's tricky about that. Just to take 2 of our young players as an example, like, okay, right now, Cody Williams doesn't know what that is. He's just trying to find it, right? Like, that's clear. For Kyle Filipowski, who was, maybe after last night, I haven't checked what DeAndre Hunter did last night, maybe the number 1 3-point shooter in the NBA since February 1, there's a real chance, like you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to go change this game offensively and do those things. Hunter last night, by the way, 1 for 3. I think there's a chance that Kyle's number 1 in the NBA since February 1st now. So you're going to come in the game. Well, I'm going to, Kyle's superpower is he's really, really skilled offensively. His weakness defensively could be close to the level of, hey, they're just calling him up to the play every single time. So what's tricky here for a young player is that you have your identity that you've built on. Bryce Sensabaugh's identity is that he can really shoot it and that he's an offensive player, but his defense is really bad. And his attention to detail defensively, at least we got the scouting report last night that you're trying to force Jaren Jackson off his left hand, and then twice in a row, Jaren Jackson went to his left hand guard when Bryce got switched on him. Seems to either be an inability to execute that play, or something was different than I thought, or 3, just not a level of focus, like an attention to detail. So there's a trick here because if your identity is, well, I can score and I can put it in the hoop, and Bryce is shooting it right up there with Kyle since All-Star break. I think Bryce is like the number 4 3-point shooter in the NBA since the All-Star break. Well, I'm going to come in and then I'm an offensive player, and that's where my mind is because that's my identity. But you don't play any defense at all, then the coaches are pretty disappointed in you. So it's tricky. Like that concept that Will has there, that on one level, we're trying to get your identity, but the other thing is you've got to be able to playing in a manner by which the team, it works for the team, right? Like I think that one's hard. Like, I'm not sure that particularly after that press conference, I don't want to get in a debate with Will Hardy about that in the public setting, but I think it's a really interesting concept. Okay, so you're going to earn your identity. So I'm going to take my identity of what my strengths are. My strengths are I can shoot it, I can play offense. And that's how I'm going to like my identity. But the coaches want me to play defense and be engaged defensively. So that one can get a little tricky. All right, one more comment from Will coming on that in regards to kind of how we look at draft prospects. I don't think we're going to get to Keyonte's shot selection until either Friday or tomorrow. I think we're running out of time. So we'll do that as we continue on the draft prospect comment coming up next here from Will Hardy. Thank you very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day.
It's one of the things coming out of the draft that I always think is so interesting is that most players spend the entire draft process defending themselves, where people talk about all the things they can't do. And they go into the interviews and the combine and they're trying to prove to everybody, no, that thing that I can't do, I can. And it creates a weird psychological thing for the players instead of them just leaning into their identity and this is why you're considering me. Like, I'm at the combine, I'm in this room for the interview because I am a knockdown shooter. It's like, sure, I'm not the best defender in the world yet, and I'm not an elite pick and roll player, and I'm not that. Yeah, if I was all those things, I'd be the first pick. But we tend to look at a lot of young players from the negative angle and just point out all the things they can't do. And I feel like it's a big part of our job as a staff and as an organization to help them establish an early identity so they have some confidence when they go in the game. But it is a case-by-case basis. There could be a young player where the weakness needs to be addressed first so that they can even get in the game.
This is so fascinating. I really find this utterly fascinating because when you come from the collegiate or the European game to the NBA, your weakness usually is that glaring. Unless you have a superpower of being 6'9", incredible athlete and overwhelming, like your weakness is probably so glaring that you can't get in the game. Jalen Wells isn't even playing well. I don't know that we see a rookie play in the playoffs this year. I'm sure I'm forgetting someone. But off the top of my head, Cleveland's not going to play any. Boston's not going to play any. New York's not going to play any. Indiana's not going to play any. Milwaukee isn't going to play any. Detroit's not playing any. Atlanta is 35-37. Ricochet will play in the playoffs. He's the number one pick. And Orlando's not going to play any. In the Western Conference, the Thunder aren't playing any rookies. Houston's not playing a rookie. Denver's not playing a rookie I can think of. Jalen Wells is not playing well. The last 10 games, 28% from the field, 22. Dalton Connect might play like 4 minutes. He's down. The Warriors will probably play, what's his name? Quentin, whatever his name is. He's shooting it really well. The kid out of the Netherlands. The Clippers aren't playing rookie. I don't think Dillingham plays for Minnesota. I don't think we see a rookie play a minute in the playoffs this year. If Phoenix makes it, Ryan Dunn will play because they have no choice. Sacramento, Devin Carter won't make it play. This was a horrendous draft. Kyle Filipowski's got like a legitimate case for like first team all rookie, by the way, just with his offensive skills. No, I'm serious. In fact, Kyle Filipowski keeps this up. We can start talking about him for rookie of the year. It's literally a class without a rookie of the year. There is Stephon Castle is going to win rookie of the year this year out of default. But this conversation, we can get into that in a second. But this conversation is fascinating to me because Isaiah Collier's inability to shoot is a weakness. It's almost so glaring. It's hard for him to show all of his superpowers. And he's got superpowers. That's why him taking 8 threes last night is just awesome. Kyle Filipowski has got a ton of superpowers. He's literally having as good an offensive season and maybe the best offensive season of any rookie in the NBA. I can really make a case that Kyle Filipowski is the offensive rookie of the year. His defense is horrendous. He's learning. It's fine. But to Will's point of like, and maybe this is where this is why you have to develop. You just have to put these guys out here in development. And then you have nights like last night where Will's really mad. And they have to try to avoid it. But it's a really interesting concept. Okay, effective field goal percentage in the NBA, in the Western Conference right now. Or excuse me, in the rookie years. Adem Bona has played 48 minutes, 12 points a game. He's a center. He dunks. He's shooting 69%. Who cares? Quentin Post, kid I was just talking about for the Warriors, and Kyle Filipowski's effective field goal percentage, which weighs three-point shooting, are the two best in the NBA of rookies that play 15 minutes or more. Post is shooting 47% on 6 shots a game and 43% from 3. And Kyle's shooting 52% better, 6 shots a game and 40% from 3 now. Post takes an extra 1.5 threes per game. They're both average like the exact same points. Kyle's averaging a rebound more and a little bit more assists. They're like the same. Quentin Post and Kyle Filipowski are like the exact same right now. They might be the exact same period, frankly. They're very similar. They have the two best effective field goal percentages in the league. The next best offensive player. Are we going to Dalton Connect, who plays 20 minutes a game? He averages the exact same amount of points. His effective field goal percentage is 57 rather than 61%. He's shooting 37% from 3 instead of Kyle's 40. He's shooting 51% from the field instead of Kyle's 52. He averages 0.9 assists to Kyle's 1.9. Kyle's a better offensive player than Dalton Connect so far this year. Kyle Filipowski is the best offensive rookie in the NBA this year. Jared McKean might have been. He played 23 games. Literally. Stephen Castle is going to win the Rookie of the Year because he scores the most points. His effective field goal percentage is 33rd of all rookies at 47.8. He's shooting 43% from the field. He's shooting 29% from 3, and he might be Michael Carter-Williams. The rookies in this class have had a horrendous year. Kyle Filipowski is the best offensive rookie in the NBA this year. No, I'm not like making this up as a homer. Find me one who's better. There are literally 5 rookies that are averaging more than 10 points a game. Jared McCain, who played 23 games, I put him to the side because he played 23 games. He's probably the answer. Stephen Castle, we just talked about. Alex Sarr, the number 2 pick for Washington, is shooting 39% from the field and 32% from 3. His effective field goal percentage is 46%. It's like the worst in the NBA. Zachary Richachet probably deserves to win Rookie of the Year. He's averaging 12 points a game, 4 rebounds, 1 assist. He's shooting 53% effective field goal percentage, 45 and 35. He's playing 25 minutes. He's viable. He's right slightly below league average, which is 54%, I believe, on effective field goal percentage now is the league average. And so literally we have nobody above league average shooting, which is not actually that unusual, frankly, for a rookie class. But this is a particularly 54.5 is the average. Jalen Wells is 52.8. He averages 10.6 points a game. He's shooting 30-20 recently. I thought he was Rookie of the Year for most of the year. He's playing 26 minutes on a good team. He's the only rookie other than Richachet that might play a playoff minute. Okay, and then there's Dalton Connect. And then there's Zach Edey. And then there's Bub Carrington, who's 39% and 32%. Like, Kyle Filipowski is the best offensive rookie in the NBA this year. It's a great pick at 32 to get that. And now to the conversation, and he's got his identity. And now to the conversation, he's got to take care of his weakness defensively to be able to play. this truly could be one of the great, like, whatever that desert is in California that's just abandoned drafts of all time. That is Locked On Jazz today. I'll try to get a show up for you tomorrow, maybe record it tonight, figure it out. It's sometimes life is, yeah, you got it. All right. It is Locked On Jazz. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you've not followed me on socials, it's DLock09. Daily newsletter, lockedondaily.com. If you've not subscribed to the show, please follow it. It's for free. And if you liked anything you got today, a 5-star review would be greatly appreciated on any of the following formats. Now, we send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA channel, Locked On NBA, on YouTube or on audio. Check out Locked On NBA for game night, every game, every night.